The story begins with a popular virtual reality game called The New Gate. We are told this is an MMORPG, where players can choose between 7 different classes of beasts to create their avatar. Inside this game, they can defeat creatures and monsters to achieve wealth, or they can take up other professions like being a blacksmith to forge legendary weapons, making it a completely open world. But suddenly, this game becomes a deadly game. We see players can't log out, and it turns out that dying in the game means dying in real life. But one day, a hero arrives. We meet Shin, who is determined to make it to the end and has promised not to let anyone else die in the game. Right after that, we see Shin ready to challenge the final boss of the game in a large dungeon. While his NPCs tell him to be careful, he starts fighting a large creature with a dragon's body. Their long, fierce battle begins. We see Shin manage to cut off its wing, but it immediately regenerates. He realizes this, so he decides to attack it even faster. He continues to strike it and manages to get its HP low. The boss tries to regenerate again, but Shin uses his magic to power up his sword. Then, he delivers the finishing blow. With a single powerful slash, he finishes off the final boss creature. A moment later, he gains several titles for defeating the monster, and the game system announces that the final boss has been defeated. This means the players can finally log out. Shin decides to check his scroll to see the players leaving the game. He is happy to see that everyone is logging out. He watches until he's the last one left in the game. He says goodbye to New Gate and prepares to leave himself. But just as he is about to log out, a large door suddenly opens behind him. This leaves him confused, since the boss was supposed to be the last event of the game. A bright light starts to emit from the door, and Shin faints. He wakes up and finds himself in a field outside, in what looks like a spacious room. He wonders what happened because everything around him seems too real to be a game. So he checks his game menu and finds that it's working. He realizes his stats have increased tremendously thanks to the titles he received after defeating the boss, making his power increase tenfold. He thinks that since his stats are there, it's proof that he finished the game and can now log out. He tries to log out again but can't find the option, and he sees the player list isn't working either. The protagonist seems a bit desperate, mentioning that first he was in a death game, and now he has been transported to this world. He also observes that the game shows him as disconnected, so he thinks he shouldn't be able to move. He starts to panic, but then calms himself down. Not knowing what to do, he thinks he shouldn't just stay there. He takes out a magical item that looks like a bird, which is a home beacon that should guide him to his house. As he follows the object, he sees a city that wasn't there before and notices that a kind of giant wall has been built around it. He is very surprised because there was nothing like this before. After a few minutes of running, he finally arrives at his house, but he notices a girl in need of help. We see 3 men bothering her and trying to take her away by force. They drag her out of a barrier that surrounds the house. As soon as they are outside, a large monster that looks like a wild boar suddenly appears in front of them. The guys get scared and run away, leaving the girl completely alone. The monster wasn't interested in them. It wanted the girl. Just as it is about to attack, Shin runs up in an instant and kicks the monster, knocking it to the ground with a single blow. Then, he tells her that he is back home. A little later, the girl takes him inside the house. She introduces herself as Tira Lewin and thanks him for saving her. She explains that those men were asking for her master's location, and when she refused to tell them, they tried to take her by force. She then asks Shin if he knows her master, since he said he was back home when he saved her. The boy asks her what her master looks like and who she is. The girl is surprised he doesn't know her master and asks if he knows the owner of the moon sanctuary, named Schnee. Shin thinks for a bit, then he racks his brain until he remembers her. He asks if she is an elf girl with silver hair and white skin. A memory of the girl is revealed, and the protagonist thinks that this girl was one of the support characters he used in the game. Shin gets very excited and asks where she is now, but Tira refuses to tell him because her master is an important person, and the guys who were threatening her were also looking for her. She says she can't say where she is, but he could leave a message with her, since she is in charge of taking care of the shop and receiving messages. Tira mentions that it costs 1,000 jewels, or Yule, for each message. Shin takes out a coin from his pocket and explains he only has 1 gale. The girl is shocked to see it. Apparently, this gold coin can only be used by kings and elders of certain species. She's also surprised by the gale coin because one of them can be enchanted and is worth 10 billion jewels. He notes that in the game, 1 gale was the smallest amount of money. A bit taken aback, Tira wonders who he is. Shin explains he's a high human, but he discovers that only 6 high humans existed in the world, and they were much more powerful than ordinary humans. Tira explains that they disappeared 500 years ago during an event called the Dusk of Majesty, or the Dusk of Prosperity. Shin is confused, so she explains it was a historical event where the high humans and many other people disappeared. The protagonist then remembers that after finishing off the final boss, all the people trapped in the game were able to log out at that moment. He realizes that thousands of people logging out at the same time must have been a major incident in this world. He concludes that he's been sent 500 years into the future of the game. He thanks her for teaching him this and offers her the Gale coin as a token of gratitude. This makes her nervous, but she's happy to have one. Shin thinks it will be useful to her since elves are good at magic, but she wonders how he knows she's an elf. She explains that her master put an illusion spell on her so people wouldn't discover she is a dark-haired elf. She reveals that elves with black hair are considered a bad omen and bring bad luck. She was expelled from her village because monsters were always attacking, so they thought it was her fault. Her master rescued her and brought her to the shop, where she can stay safe thanks to the barrier her master created. She has been living like this for the last 100 years. Shin realizes this is why the boar appeared. Tira mentions that her hair was silver before a curse was cast on her. Her master is looking for a cure, and she says her hair used to be silver. At that moment, Shin thinks of a solution and decides to open a screen with his skills. He decides to analyze her and discovers she has a curse called Cursed Gift that manifests randomly, which is why her hair is dark and monsters attack her. He knows how to undo it. He tells the girl to stay still and uses his purification skill on her. After a few seconds, he's disappointed that only part of her hair returned to normal silver color, but Tira can't believe it and gets emotional. With tears in her eyes, she thanks him and says that even though he couldn't remove the entire curse, she is very happy because it had been 100 years since she had seen her silver hair again. Next, Shin says it's time to test if it worked. They try to leave the barrier, but they aren't attacked. The biggest test is crossing the magical barrier that her master had set up. They both go out, and after a moment's hesitation, the girl manages to cross it. As they walk through the forest, they are very alert. After a short walk, they reach a large field, and Shin says that it seems the curse has disappeared, since no creature attacked them. This whole situation makes the girl cry tears of joy, as it had been a long time since she could enjoy such a beautiful day. Back at the Moon Sanctuary, Tira explains that Schnee will take a while to return. Shin decides to visit the city to learn more about this world. He thinks that if her master is alive, his other support characters might be as well. Tira tells him he should carry a letter of recommendation to help him enter the city of Bayreuth. She explains he can use it to pass through the town's checkpoint more easily. He thinks it's too much, but she wanted to thank him even more. She promises to let him know when Schnee returns, so Shin thanks her before leaving. He enters the city, and the guard explains that the letter of recommendation is a big deal because it works in other kingdoms and can even get him an audience with the king. The guard takes Shin to the Adventurers Guild. Shin enters and tries to register as an adventurer, but the receptionist, a girl named Els, explains that registrations happen on the first floor. So he goes to the first floor and thinks the receptionist there looks a lot like the last one. He is surprised to see a girl identical to Els, but her name is Elsie, or Celia. She explains that the last one is her twin sister, Celica. He pays the initial fee and waits for his adventurer card. A few hours later, we see him in a bar, and Els/Celica appears with something to eat. He starts eating, but she keeps staring at him, so he wonders what happened. She says she wants to verify his letter of recommendation and asks if she can check its authenticity. Shin agrees, but says it has to be after he eats. Right then, he finds out that the guildmaster is right behind him. They decide to talk in another room, and the man introduces himself as Barlux, the head of the guild. He asks to see Shin's letter, then places an identical one on top of it. They immediately start to glow, and Barlux sees that they resonate, so he knows it's genuine. He explains that letters of recommendation are valuable as they're the most reliable form of identification and grant access to many places, even an audience with the king. Because of this, many people try to steal them. Barlux tells him it would be a disaster if it fell into the wrong hands, so he asks him to destroy it if he can't protect it. But Shin assures him that he'll be fine and can't do that after Tira trusted him with it. Barlux is glad to hear this and thinks they will get along well. The next day, he goes to get his adventurer card. Elsie/Celica sees that he's wearing new clothes, while he thinks his other outfit was too flashy for a low-class adventurer. She gives him the guild card and explains that there are 9 ranks starting from G, and he can go up to a double S rank by completing missions. She adds that he can only accept jobs 2 ranks higher than his own. Shin takes on an herb collecting mission and says goodbye to her. We see Shin frustrated in the forest because he has been searching for hours. He remembers that in the game, this mission was for beginners. He suddenly notices an enemy on the radar, so he goes to see what it is. He discovers that it's a skull-faced jack with a level of 359, a very powerful creature. He also finds a broken carriage and can't ignore it, so he decides to attack the monster. He wonders why an undead is holding a light sword and thinks it's a unique monster. He attacks it again, but it doesn't seem effective, and his sword is already damaged. He has no other choice and unlocks a limit that was on him, deciding to release his power. He charges again, using magic to enhance his sword's damage, and this time he eliminates the monster with one strike. break. The monster's sword flies away, and he regrets it because he wanted it. The monster drops a gemstone, so he decides to accept it as the sword lands in the king's castle. The guards are confused about what happened. We meet a girl named Rione Strail, the second princess of the kingdom. She asks them to call an appraiser to analyze the sword and investigate who threw it, thinking he must be strong. Back with Shin, he walks through the city and sees injured soldiers. The guard explains that a squad of 12 was attacked by the skullface, but only 4 returned, and Shin realizes that the carriage belonged to them. The guard also mentions the sword thrown into the castle, so Shin feels guilty for the trouble. He returns to the guild, and Celia notices that the adventurers have gathered to defeat the skullface, but Shin reveals that he already killed it and shows her the gem it dropped, leaving her in disbelief. She shouts that one person is not enough to defeat a skullface, but turns red for getting too close. Celia's co-worker, Alice, suddenly appears. Celia tells her that Shin defeated the skullface Jack. He explains that he has no proof because the equipment from the skullface wasn't much, so he didn't bring it with him. Alice finds it strange since even rank B equipment can be worth a small fortune. She asks Celia to analyze the gemstone, since it should contain the skullface's mana. Shin wonders about the frequency of skullfaces. Alice explains that many people lose their lives in the northern forest due to the monsters, so the ranks of the dead can merge with mana, creating the perfect environment for undead creation. But the forest doesn't have much mana, so there shouldn't be a powerful undead. Shin realizes it was an exception and reveals that its level was 359, which shocks both of them. Celia runs to analyze the stone, and Alice explains that if this is true, he's stronger than a rank A group, but he asks her to keep it a secret since he doesn't want to draw attention. He later goes to the restaurant, and while he waits, Celia explains that someone will share the table with him since they're full. A man suddenly appears with a legendary spear called Venom and sits next to him. Everyone in the place is afraid of him. He introduces himself as Wilhelm, or Avis, and assumes Shin is a new adventurer but notices he's above average. Shin explains that it's his 3rd day, and he doesn't know much. Avis realizes that's why he isn't afraid of him, and mentions that they call him a vampire because he hunts many undead. Shin wonders if it's because he's pale, which makes everyone nervous, but Avis laughs. He reveals that the real reason is his spear, because it can drain life. Celia brings the food, so they enjoy their meal together. Later, he goes to the library to research the decline of glory 500 years ago, but there aren't many records about it. Meanwhile, Barlux is in a meeting to talk about the skullface. They wonder who would defeat a Jack and not collect its armor. The old man thinks those with letters of recommendation are strange. They mention that on the day the skullface was defeated, the sword was thrown into the castle, so they wonder if the events are related. Barlux wonders what the sword looked like, so the night Aldi reveals that the blade was 2 meters long, made of magical steel, and enchanted with the element of light, making it as powerful as the national treasure. Barlux is surprised it's a legendary grade weapon, and Aldi thinks he can't ignore someone who defeated a monster with that sword. Later, Shin eats a skewer in the square and notices a girl staring at him. He offers her food, and she accepts without hesitation. He notices she doesn't look like a beggar. The girl is a tiger type and introduces herself as Millie, thanking him for the food. Avis suddenly appears and explains that Millie is an orphan from the church, so he always has to get her when she runs away. He decides to go home, but Millie goes up to Shin and whispers in his ear before leaving. She tells him that there is a fox in the northern forest and that he must go save it. At night, Shin wonders why Millie asked him to rescue a fox. He thinks it might be a good pastime until Schnee returns, but he realizes he forgot to leave his message for Tira. He goes to the moon sanctuary and asks Tira to show Schnee his sword when she sees her. The girl is surprised to see this ancient weapon and calls it Blue Moon. She realizes it's a powerful weapon that can only be used by him and Schnee, or someone designated by them. Tira is actually scared of it. Shin thinks it must be because of its materials and mentions the legendary monsters he defeated to create it, which shocks her. He asks her to keep it safe anyway and gives her letters to keep in touch. He explains that they will be able to reach him no matter where he is because she just has to write the person's name and say send. Tira wonders why he doesn't send it directly to Schnee, so he explains that he tried but kept failing. He tries using it with her, and she receives the letter, so it's working. Shin figures it's because he hasn't met Schnee in this new world yet. Tira asks for more letters because she wants to be a mage and study the item, so he gives her more before leaving. He goes to the northern forest to look for the fox and keeps walking until he finds a shrine with a mental barrier telling him to leave. But because of his strength, he enters normally. He continues but suddenly feels something. He finds a small fox inside the building and notices that it has a poison effect and is also cursed. He quickly cures it, but this revives an army of the undead. He summons his spear and starts eliminating the skeletons one after another. He kills all of them, but the statues begin to break and 2 demons come out of them. He has never seen these monsters before, and they are level 674. They are gate guardians that were statues and turned into powerful wolves. One attacks with fire and the other with ice. They attack him, but he dodges and uses a skill called shadow binding, but they release a curtain of mist to escape. He can't see anything, but the wolves keep attacking him. The fox suddenly shows shows him something, and he realizes it's the magic circle where it was. The mist doesn't enter there, so he can use his skills. The wolves charge at him, but he uses his binding bow, eliminating them with one strike. The mist clears, and the fox jumps into his arms. He wonders what race it is and discovers it's an elemental tail, one of the strongest monsters in the game. He has never heard of a baby version, but asks if it wants to go with him, so it jumps onto his head. Meanwhile, Schnee receives Tiara's letter and is surprised to learn about her master looking for her. Shin thinks it's better to hide the elemental from the guild, so he suggests making a pact with it. He explains that it's like a partnership between a tamer and a monster, and it hides the monster's level and species so they can be together all the time. The fox seems excited, so he creates the pact, and a symbol appears on both of them. He also names her Yuzua, and she seems to like it. He suddenly gets a message from Tira because she managed to talk to Schnee, and she's waiting for a response. He's happy with the news and decides to go to the guild. He reports the army of the undead he found in the forest and looks for a job. He notices a mission at the orphanage near the church and thinks it must be a special request since it has no rank. He also remembers that Millie lives there, so he decides to visit her and takes the job. He arrives at the church where a woman named Tria greets him. She asks if he came for the job, so he confirms this and also mentions Millie. They go to a room where he meets Millie, who gets excited and hugs him. Tria notices he's not a bad person, and it's been a long time since Millie got attached to someone like that. Shin asks Millie if this is the fox she mentioned, so she confirms and thanks him. He turns to Tria and asks about the request. She mentions it's about a skill successor, and Shin realizes that apparently few people have skills now. She explains that she's looking for someone to teach a skill, and Shin wonders if it involves healing or poisoning, but she reveals it's purification. She knows it's hard to find, but gets surprised by Shin's reaction and learns that he can teach it. But Shin has a condition, saying he wants to know about Millie's powers and also wants her to share any information from the church. She seems hesitant, but Millie explains that Shin isn't a problem, so she accepts his terms. Tria talks about Millie's powers and reveals that she has the title of Star Composer, or Star Child, so she has unexpected visions that never fail. Shin notes that it's a powerful ability and mentions that many would want to take advantage of it, but she assures him that she told everyone to be discreet about it. She tells him that an adventurer helps the orphanage because he used to be an orphan, and Shin realizes she's talking about Avis. She explains that everyone is afraid of him, so the kids are safe. Shin is ready to teach the skill, but she explains that she's not the one who's going to be learning it. She wants the granddaughter of the former priest to learn it, since things would be easier if she inherited the church later on. A nun appears and asks if he's the one who will save them. She reveals that they're about to close the orphanage because the church doesn't have a priest at the moment, and the person sent to take over only cares about money and wants to get rid of them. The granddaughter of the former priest has the right to inherit the church, but she still needs to have this specific skill. Shin realizes why Tria needs him. Tria calls for Shin and introduces him to the granddaughter of the former priest, who introduces herself as Rashia, but bites her tongue. Tria explains that she can be clumsy but is hardworking. They start talking, but Avis suddenly appears to find out who accepted the job and discovers it was Shin. He asks Shin about his intentions, but Millie reassures him, so he realizes she saw something and decides to trust Shin. He asks about the skill, so Shin explains that Rashia can get it after defeating 200 undead creatures that are over level 150 while holding a sacred orb. They're shocked to hear this, but he assures them that he can weaken the monsters for her to land the final blow, and he also has the orb. Rashia is speechless, but she promises to do her best, so Avis decides to go with them. Later, Avis calls Shin for a drink and asks him if he's a chosen one, someone who has a title or knowledge that they shouldn't have. Shin asks if it's like memories of a past life, but Avis explains that it's information about items and monsters, so Shin doesn't think he's a chosen one. Shin sees a message from Tira, mentioning that Schnee said she'd come back soon. He suddenly gets another notification, and his letter of recommendation appears. Avis is surprised to see it and reveals that he has one too, so Shin can't believe it, realizing that they have something in common. The next day, the trio goes to the Ghost Plains where they encounter the undead. Shin traps them with his barrier while Avis breaks their legs to immobilize them, and Rashia finishes them off using healing magic, which damages the undead. They do this until they reach a barrier which contains higher level monsters. Avis uses his adventurer card to enter, and they keep weakening monsters so that Rashia can land the final hit. Shin explains that she'll be at level 150 when she learns purification. On the other side of the Ghost Plains, Rion defeats a skull-faced Jack and is impressed with how much easier it is to beat them with her new sword. The knight is worried about the other group, but Schnee offers to handle it. The group is desperate, and she arrives at the last minute, quickly defeating the undead and breaking its core while everyone looks at her in shock. Schnee quickly heals them, and the commander thanks her, knowing they would have been forced to retreat without her. He remembers that several unusual undead have appeared in the last month and still can't believe she took down a monster that his entire squad couldn't. He realizes that this is the strength of someone who fought with the high humans. She decides to search the area in case there are more more undead and runs through the forest, eager to see her master again. Meanwhile, Avis faces a skull-faced Jack, and he easily defeats it, allowing Rashia to land the final blow. She's suddenly surrounded by a golden light, but Shin assures her that's normal when learning a new skill. Her mind is flooded with thoughts on how to use purification. Shin congratulates her, and Rashia realizes she can now save the orphans. He suggests they leave the area after resting, but Yuzua suddenly senses a strange presence. Shin notices something in the sky, and Avis is worried. Avis reveals that it's the magical matter of the undead, and when drained from the monsters, their forms disappear. All the material accumulates into one mass in the sky and falls in the form of a giant skull-faced Jack. Rashia is terrified, and they discover it's a skull-faced lord, which is at level 804. It can easily destroy an entire nation, so Shin thinks the seal might not hold. The creature suddenly leaps into the sky and punches the barrier, causing it to break. They can't believe it only took one hit, and Rashia falls to the ground in despair. They decide to flee, but the lord roars, raising an army of undead to surround them. Avis wants to break through and escape, but Shin's demeanor changes, and he explains he's staying. Avis tries to talk to him, but Shin removes his limiter and asks them to return to the city. Avis understands immediately, and Shin casts a physical enhancement buff to help him escape. He clears a path for Avis, and after they leave, Shin summons his sword. Yuzua uses her fire to deal with the undead, but the Skull Lord keeps summoning more. Shin launches a powerful attack, creating a crater in the ground. Schnee notices the explosion and goes to investigate. He checks his map and sees he's completely surrounded, but a blue marker suddenly appears, cutting through the undead army. He remembers that a blue marker means an ally. He jumps to join her and finally meets Schnee, but they don't have much time alone, so Yuzua raises a barrier so they can talk. She throws herself into his arms, and he says he's back as a tear runs down her face. Yuzua's mana runs out, so they decide to deal with the Skull Lord first. They use a combined spell, quickly killing the weaker undead. The Skull Lord also takes damage as Shin summons another sword and takes the opportunity to land the finishing blow. It falls to the ground, demanding power before dying, and Shin is shocked that a monster can talk. He retrieves the orb and suggests finishing their conversation. He explains that after defeating the boss and freeing everyone from the game, a portal threw him 500 years into the future. Schnee reveals that she and the other support characters didn't disappear after he cleared the dungeon, so they waited for their masters. But the continent was thrown into chaos after the incident, so the group decided to split up to help control the disasters, and she later returned to the Moon Sanctuary. She's happy to find her master again, but he begs her to stop calling him master, since she's a legend now, and it will attract too much attention. He asks her to call him by his name, but they blush when she does. She wonders what he'll do next, and he talks about his plan to visit the sacred place and find clues about how to return. Schnee is sad to know that Shin wants to go back to his world. The day breaks, so they decide to return to the sanctuary to organize a celebration party for their reunion. She notices Yuzua, and he explains she's an elemental, but he realizes she now has 3 tails. She suddenly starts talking, and Shin freaks out as she explains that this ability was restored when he defeated the Skull Lord. Shin thinks it's because he was a boss, but he asks the fox not to talk in front of people, and also to merge her 3 tails into one to avoid attention. She follows his instructions. He remembers Avis and Rashia, so he decides to catch up with them before they reach the guild. We see Avis running with Rashia, and he senses something approaching, so they prepare to fight but discover it's just Shin. Rashia faints in fear. Meanwhile, Rioni arrives at the battle site and wonders who could have made such a powerful attack. A soldier named Godus interrupts her, showing her the blade found in the ravine, and he recognizes the falcon emblem on the hilt. He demonstrates the blade's power, telling her it's almost broken but still holds immense power. He thinks that the only one capable of forging swords of this caliber is the Eben blacksmith, the most skilled artisan among the high humans. Rion is surprised since high humans are extinct. She remembers that the blacksmith owns the Moon Sanctuary, so she suggests they visit the place. She declares she would challenge him to a duel but wouldn't mind marrying him. Godus pleads with her not to attack him just to test his skill. Meanwhile, Avis demands that Shin explain himself after seeing his relationship with Schnee. Shin tries to lie, saying she defeated the boss, but Avis points his spear at him. He attacks and tells him to stop playing dumb. So Shin finally confesses that he's a high human, and Schnee recognizes him as her master. Avis mentions that high humans are incredibly strong and skilled, so some people revere them as gods. Shin reveals that he's a blacksmith and even offers to upgrade his spear, but Avis warns him not to touch his weapon. Rashia finally wakes up and she's surprised to see Schnee. The group continues back to the city, and Shin gives Avis a message card to contact him if anything goes wrong. Avis accepts, heading to the city with Rashia. Schnee comments that Shin never bragged but always protected the weak. He suggests going to the moon sanctuary, and we see her happy to be with him. They arrive at the sanctuary, and Tira runs to tell Schnee about Shin, but realizes they came together. She asks if he's staying for dinner, and Schnee says it's obvious, revealing that he's the owner of the moon sanctuary. Tira freaks out, admitting she didn't take him seriously when he introduced himself as a high human, but now she has to believe it. She realizes he's her boss and begs him to forgive her, but he prefers to keep things casual. He also introduces Yuzua as his new pet, and she's even more surprised. It's dinner time, and Shin is impressed with the food. Tira has never seen dishes like these before, and he's happy that he gave Schnee the ingredients to make the meal. Tira notices an aura around the food, but Shin doesn't see anything and lists some high-quality meats and vegetables from monsters, which are almost impossible to obtain. Tira is shocked because they're so rare that no one would ever think of cooking with them. Schnee explains that the aura is the remnants of mana, which is normal in powerful monsters and rare plants. They enjoy the meal together. Shin hears about what happened with the other support characters and is happy to know they have their own lives now. Tira suddenly interrupts them, and Shin notices she's drunk, so Schnee puts her to bed. He laughs and heads to his room, which hasn't changed at all. He sees Yuzua sleeping on the bed and goes to sleep, but later wakes up to find Schnee lying next to him. He wonders what happened and gets nervous, but she holds him and starts crying while calling his name in her sleep, so he apologizes for leaving her. In the morning, Shin wakes up and gets nervous, seeing Yuzua has taken on a human form as she hugs him. He creates clothes used by humanoid elementals, so she thanks him, but struggles to wear them. They go down for breakfast, and Schnee is happy to see that Yuzua has transformed. After the meal, they hear Yuzua's story. She explains that she tried to stop the cataclysm 500 years ago, but suddenly felt pain. She nearly died, but Shin appeared and saved her at the last moment. He mentions that he only found her thanks to Millie, so Yuzua wants to thank her again. Later, Schnee suggests they make an elven treat that Tira makes as a gift. Shin points out that the moon sanctuary shouldn't be specializing in food, but Schnee explains that they couldn't replenish the weapons because only Shin can open the arsenal. He decides to make blades later. She changes the subject and wants them to meet Gerard. Shin is surprised to hear that he's alive because high beasts only live up to 150 years, and it's been 500 years since he saw him. But Schnee explains that he's been waiting for Shin all these years. Gerard was the first beast king and took the throne when he united the various beast tribes. Shin wants to meet him and decides they will leave the next day. Tira promises to guard the shop, but Schnee wants her to join them this time. Now that Shin is around, the shop can be moved anywhere. Tira loves the idea. Shin mentions they should gather supplies for the trip, and Schnee mentions that she's going to the kingdom to report about the skullface lord, so she can take care of the supplies. Shin decides to look for a job in the direction of Falnido to rank up while they travel, and also wants to make swords to restock the inventory. Schnee suggests creating a party to use voice chat, and Shin is surprised to learn it's now known as telepathy. He adds everyone, and Schnee also suggests that Tira register as an adventurer. Shin opens the forge and warns Yuzua not to touch anything, as some items are cursed. He starts working, but his first blade is at a level far beyond anything available in the country shops, so he reduces the quality and restocks the inventory. Tira changes into adventurer clothes and is ready to go, so they head out together. Shin feels embarrassed by her new clothes, and she says he'll carry the shopping as punishment for staring at her. Tira is surprised by how busy the market is as she drags him around, but Shin reminds her that she doesn't know where the guild is, so he guides her there, and Tira blushes as he holds her hand. His rank has increased to E, and Celia explains that his report about the skullface in the undead army was verified, so he earned a promotion, but they can't increase too much at once. She asks about his relationship with Tira, and Shin explains that they're going on a journey, but Celia doesn't believe it and thinks they're lovers because they were holding hands. He explains that it's not like that, but she insists they don't need to be embarrassed. Shin decides to change the subject and asks if she has any information about the Holy Land. She explains that only adventurers above C rank can have that information, so he decides to ask again when he ranks up. He looks for a quest on the way to Falnido, and she tells him about a mission to escort a carriage to a transit point called Bayon. They leave the guild, and Tira thinks they still have plenty of time together, so Shin suggests walking around the city and visiting the church, which excites Tira. They enjoy each other's company while browsing the shops. They go to the church, and Shin greets Rashia. Tira introduces herself, and Rashia is amazed to learn that she's from the Moon Sanctuary. We learn that Rashia is completely obsessed with Schnee. They go inside, and Millie hugs Yuzua and Shin. Rashia tells him she has been appointed the next priest of the temple, and Tria mentions that they're grateful to him. Shin asks about Avis, so they explain that he went to check on the priest who almost took the church. Shin thinks it makes sense and asks them to give him a bracelet. He also made a necklace for Millie. They say goodbye to get Tira's guild card, and Celica hands it to her. Schnee thinks it's time to take the moon sanctuary, and Tira admits it's strange to take a house along. They go to an alley, and Schnee shows her a crystal with a teleportation spell linked to it, which allows them to return to a registered location. Tira reveals that teleportation is a lost magic, but Schnee assures her he can make as many as he wants if he has the necessary ingredients, reminding her that he's a legendary high human. They use the crystal, and Tira is impressed by the teleportation. Schnee decides it's time to go, so he uses a command to store the moon sanctuary. He shows her a necklace, revealing that it's the portable mode of the sanctuary. Tira thinks it's amazing, and Schnee decides to head to the quest location. They reach the carriage, and an adventurer named Gaian greets them. Another adventurer named Tsubaki appears, and since they also took the quest, they'll be working together. The dwarf merchant, Nog, tells them he's counting on them to get to Bayan, so they set off on their way. In the castle, the king meets with his officials and learns that the moon sanctuary has disappeared. He's upset because the building has existed since before the dusk of prosperity, and no one can conquer it since it was made with lost technology. They wonder about Schnee, and according to reports, she's heading toward the castle and will arrive within a day. In the carriage, Schnee thinks it's a good idea to get to know each other's skills. Gaian explains that he's an A-class samurai, but doesn't know how to use magic. Tsubaki mentions that she's a rank B brawler and can use support magic to enhance her speed. Tira explains that she's an alchemist and just became an adventurer, but she can also use a sword or bow and simple healing magic. Schnee reveals that he's a samurai like Gaian, but can use a bit of fire and lightning magic. He also introduces Yuzua as a monster, explaining that he has a tamer contract with her. Gaian is impressed that a samurai can use magic, and Tsubaki is surprised that he isn't from Hinamoto, since most samurai come from there. Gaian explains that Hinamoto is an island with many samurai-based guilds. He mentions the names of the guilds, and Schnee is surprised to learn that the guilds from 500 years ago have formed a country. The carriage suddenly stops, and a group of bandits appear. Schnee tells Yuzua to protect Nog, and they hide in the carriage. They prepare to fight, and Tira is nervous because she has never killed anyone before. The bandits think they have no chance and also demand that they hand over Tsubaki so that they can have fun with her. They keep provoking her, which makes Schnee furious. Tira notices a murderous aura in him and wants him to return to normal, realizing she needs to shoot. The bandits know most of them are low rank, and Gaian realizes they had an informant. An arrow suddenly flies through, killing a hidden bandit, and the others attack. Tsubaki uses her speed enhancement to defeat one of them. Gaian also attacks, cutting right through a bandit's sword. Schnee takes down two at once, and the leader realizes they're not ordinary E-ranks. Schnee cuts his sword, and the bandit sees a terrifying look on his face. We see the bandit beaten up, and Schnee demands that he give up his informant, but Tira suddenly grabs him to calm him down. Tsubaki is confused, and Schnee wonders what she's doing as Tira realizes his mood has returned to normal. Schnee and Tsubaki are shocked, and Tira blushes, realizing she instinctively did what Schnee used to do when she was little. The group heads on their way, and Gaian thinks the bandits attacked them because the wagon was connected to the church, so Schnee thinks about what they were after. They make it to Bayan, and Nog gives them all certificates of completion. After they report to the guild, Schnee wonders where Gaian and Tsubaki are headed next, so they mention they are headed to Kilmont and hope to meet again in the future. Schnee notes that they're still a long way from Falnido, so he suggests buying their own carriage. They go to check them out, but Schnee finds them all the same, so he thinks about modifying one. But Tira worries about him overdoing it. They find one they like, and the seller asks if they have bought horses yet, mentioning they may need more than one since the carriage is quite heavy. But Schnee thinks he could use Yuzua as a last resort. He gets a call from Schnee, and she mentions she has finished her business in the kingdom. She offers to catch a monster to pull the carriage and says she will arrive after a day. She also mentions the commotion caused by moving the sanctuary, but thinks it's a good thing because she's tired of them constantly trying to recruit her. They head to an inn, and it's quite expensive, but they decide it's okay to treat themselves. Yuzua also relaxes, and they all have dinner together. Tira wants to have a bath before going to bed, and Yuzua asks to join her. They head into the bath, but Schnee hears them fooling around, so he gets flustered and distracts himself by looking outside. While we see Schnee coming across an enormous beast, she arrives the next morning, so the group goes to meet her. Yuzua detects something up ahead, and we see that Schnee has tamed an enormous jade wolf, a unique monster of level 751. Tira can't believe it, but the wolf takes a liking to her. Schnee wonders why Schnee chose it, so she mentions it had to be a sacred class monster to serve him. He thinks it's way too big, but Schnee predicted he would say this and reveals the wolf can make itself smaller. She asks if he likes it but starts to get sad, so he quickly assures her he's happy with it. Yuzua is able to talk to it and mentions its name is Shimmer, or Kaguru. They head off to Falnido, and they can't help but attract attention. Tiara notes how smooth the ride is thanks to Shin's modifications, and Schnee notes that it even outperforms a royal carriage. Yuzua talks to Shimmer as he runs, and we learn that when he was young, he and his mother ruled the sacred mountain, but his mother was defeated by an adventurer, and only he survived. He ran away as fast as he could and ended up being saved by an elf, which happened to be Tiara. She remembers saving a puppy 100 years ago and can't believe they are the same. Schnee offers to transfer his ownership over to her, so they take a break to do this. Schnee dissolves her ownership, and Tiara forms a contract with him. Tiara is exhausted after this, so they decide to rest for the night. Shin asks about Schnee's intentions, so she mentions she wants Shimmer to protect Tiara since she can't always be around. We see them in the forest approaching Falnido, and they are met by two high beasts. Shin can tell they are high level, and Schnee mentions she messaged Gerard, so he must have sent the two to meet them. They offer to take them to see the first king, so Shin packs up the carriage and they follow after them. They arrive at a great mansion, and the group is taken to Gerard, who is surprised to see his master after all these years. He pays his respects and introduces the current king, Wolfgang, and his daughter, Quor. But Shin tells him he can stop calling him master. In a flashback, we see Shin and Gerard surrounded by countless monsters, fighting together. We return to the present as they wonder how they were able to survive that battle. Gerard asks Shin why he went missing for 500 years, so he tells him everything that happened. Gerard realizes this is a great opportunity for him and reveals that his life is about to come to an end, thinking he only has a few months left because his health is starting to decline. He thinks that the gods heard his prayers because Shin returned, and he challenges him to a duel, saying he wants to fight his master before he dies because he thinks Shin is the strongest warrior in the world. Shin realizes that Gerard wants to die in battle and accepts the challenge. That evening, Gerard tells his companions that he has found the place where he wants to die and tells them about the duel, saying it will take place after a week. His confidants realize that the time has finally come, but Quor asks them why they're so calm because she doesn't want him to die. He explains that he has lived a long life and is prepared for this moment, and he thinks he's about to have the greatest battle of his life. Days pass, and Shin sees Gerard's equipment, realizing it's in terrible condition, so he decides to repair it and make it stronger. He shows it to Gerard, telling him he can fight without holding back. Gerard asks Shin if he's going to leave Schnee to return to his world, and he explains that he will, saying he's been fighting to return home. The next day, everyone makes their way to the forest, and Gerard is excited. Schnee promises to protect everyone from any stray attacks so he can focus on the fight. Shin and Gerard start fighting, and the others see an explosion as their powers clash, destroying everything around them. Gerard is able to keep up with Shin, and his companions are impressed, realizing he's stronger than they thought because he's able to match the strength of a high human. But Schnee thinks they're just getting started. Gerard mentions he developed new techniques to defeat Shin, but none of them are working. Shin tells him to stop holding back, so he decides to use his full power. He transforms into a werewolf. He recalls that Shin promised not to use the title he acquired from defeating the final boss, thinking it would be unfair. Shin tries to attack with magic, but Gerard suddenly disappears and launches a counterattack, pushing Shin back. He unleashes his ultimate technique as he fires a powerful blast which destroys everything in its path, but Shin manages to block it. He realizes that Gerard is right behind him and struggles to defend himself as Gerard continues to pursue him relentlessly. Shin decides to fight seriously, and they both unleash their ultimate techniques, causing a massive clash of energy. Gerard manages to break Shin's sword and sees an opening, so he prepares to land the finishing blow. He delivers the attack, but Shin notes that he's out of strength. He coughs up blood as he returns to his human form, realizing that his time has come. Shin admits defeat, and Gerard reveals that he trained 500 years for that moment, so he's glad that he was able to fight him in the end. But he knows that Shin was still holding back and asks him to display his full power. Shin unleashes his aura, creating a massive pillar of light, and Gerard is happy to be able to witness his full power before he dies. Shin returns to the others with Gerard, telling them that he was able to ascend to the level of a high human because he was able to defeat him in the duel. Quor mourns his death, but his companions note that he died happy, so she realizes they shouldn't cry for him because he died without regrets. Everyone attends Gerard's funeral and they all pay their respects. That evening, Schnee sees him and realizes he's depressed, so she hugs him. He explains that he gave Gerard the fight he always wanted, but he's sad because his friend died, so he starts crying. The next day, the group heads into the city, and Shin wonders why they have beast ears, so Schnee mentions how elves stand out, so they're trying to blend in. We learn they are there to see Zaid, one of Shin's other companions, because he was also at Gerard's funeral as a representative for his country. They go to where all the representatives are staying, and Shin wonders if Zaid also became a king, like Gerard. Schnee mentions how he was the first emperor of the Dragon Empire but ended up retiring. They are taken to a room and Zaid is brought to them. He instantly bows to Shin, swearing to serve him once more, but Shin tells him to relax. Zaid wonders what Shin plans on doing next, so he explains how he is headed to the sacred palace to do more research, and Zaid asks to join him after he first goes back to his country. They decide to keep in touch with their telepathy, and as Shin leaves, he gives Zaid's old weapon back. Zaid is amazed to see it after so long and notices that it's even stronger than he remembers. Shin mentions he leveled up his mana control when he was fixing Gerard's equipment, so he was able to make the weapon 5 times stronger. They visit the Adventurers Guild, and Shin decides to level up his adventurer rank, so he takes a goblin slaying mission. Quor asks to tag along. They head into the forest and they all easily take out a goblin each. Shin turns in the quest, and the clerk mentions there's also a message for him. It turns out to be from Guildmaster Barlux, and it seems Shin is being summoned by the palace. He remembers the incident with his skullface's sword, causing him to panic. He visits Wolfgang before he leaves and gives him Gerard's gauntlets. Wolfgang notes how they were destroyed in the fight, but Shin mentions how he was the one who created them, so repairing it was no problem. Wolfgang tries them on, finding the power unbelievable. They say farewell, and Shin prepares to teleport since using the wagon would be too slow. They return to the location of the Old Moon Sanctuary, and Shin can tell they are being watched. Schnee thinks the kingdom must be hoping the Moon Sanctuary will reappear. Shin meets with Barlux at the guild, and he introduces a mage named Alad who helps appraise gems for the guild. Shin wonders why the palace is summoning him, but Alad suddenly asks him if he knows about the sword that flew into the palace and crashed into the princess's room. Shin is shocked learning this, and Alad notes how the sword is comparable to a royal treasure. He also mentions the gem Shin left behind from the skullface, saying the mana matched the sword, so they figured out Shin was behind the incident. Barlux mentions that since he has a recommendation letter from the Moon Sanctuary, he isn't in any trouble but mentions it was the second Princess Ryon who summoned him. At night, Shin explains the situation to the others, and Schnee thinks that the kingdom must be trying to recruit him or marry him off to a noble. He wonders what he should do, so Schnee suggests pretending that he's engaged to her, or even engaged to Tira, and Yuzua also wants to be his fiancé, but he panics hearing this since she's way too young. The next day, Shin visits the castle and he's escorted by Goddess. We see Goddess is at level 188, and Shin wonders if he is the strongest knight in the kingdom. Shin is taken to the princess's room and meets with Rion. He wonders why she summoned him, so she reveals the sword from the skullface. She imagines that the skullface must have been strong, so Shin plays along and mentions that he even broke his weapon when he fought it. Rion suddenly calls him different, mentioning how she has an intuition skill that tells her he is a good person and not an assassin. She decides to get to the point and asks to fight him. Goddess is against this, but she explains that she needs to do it to confirm his abilities. She leads him to the teleportation room, and they're transported to the training ground, which was built for battle between the Chosen Ones. She tells him to grab a weapon, and they begin the fight. Their weapons clash, but Rion suddenly tries to kick Shin, and he manages to evade. He realizes she's a skilled fighter and adjusts his stats so that he can fight her on even terms. He charges in, trying to overpower her, but she tells him to use his skills. He prepares to use one of his abilities, but she's able to copy it, as Goddess notes that they're evenly matched. Shin tries to strike her down, but she suddenly attacks, shattering the ground, and he can't believe how powerful she is. She's surprised that he was able to dodge it, and he notes that he would have died if it hit him. He suggests ending the fight because her sword has reached its limit, and Goddess tells her she has achieved her goal, so she decides to end the duel. Rion asks Shin to join her, saying the kingdom needs him, but he refuses because he prefers to live the life of an adventurer, and she respects his decision. He asks her why she has the skull-face sword, so she explains that it crashed into her room and tells him about the custom where a man offers his sword to marry a woman. She considers it a gift from him, but he explains that it reached her by accident. Goddess warns him that there are people planning to use the incident to arrest him, but Rion suggests treating it as tribute so that they will stop bothering him, and she wants to keep it, offering to pay for it. He tells her he doesn't need money and asks her if he can access the magical library instead. She accepts the deal. They return to the teleportation room but realize the guards have been knocked out. They see the priest named Gerald, realizing he's being controlled. Goddess tries to stop him, but Rion and Shin suddenly disappear. We see them in the ruins of a city. Rion recognizes it as a Holy Land and wonders why Gerald lost his mind. They decide to head back to the palace, but she reveals that she can't use telepathy because she doesn't have a party. Shin decides to contact Schnee. He tells her about the situation, saying someone was controlling Gerald, and she knows that mind control skills are considered taboo. He tells Schnee to take care of everything and meet him in a nearby city called Valmer. Schnee tells Tira she has an urgent business and asks her to join, saying they need to go to the palace. Along the way, Schnee reveals that a demon is involved in the incident. She explains that demons are monsters born from miasma and are ranked according to their capabilities, with the humanoid demons at the top. She thinks they're dealing with a Count-class demon who is at least level 300. Tira mentions that she's nowhere near that level, but Schnee tells her not to worry. Schnee uses a concealment spell which makes them invisible, and she jumps over the wall, saying they're going to sneak into the castle. They walk past the guards and head to the dungeon, as Schnee explains that the demon has already been captured. She uses her magic, and the guards fall asleep as she takes a key from them, using it to open Geralt's prison cell. She's about to dispel the demon's magic, but she suddenly gets attacked. She defends herself, and the demon named Magnu appears. He knows who she is, but tells her not to get in his way. He tries to kill her, but she easily overpowers him. He asks her why she's protecting Geralt, so she explains that she doesn't want him to die because he's innocent. He realizes she's working for a high human, but he tells her the world is in chaos and the age of man is ending. He invites her to join him, but she refuses. He reminds her that her master left her, saying he will never return. She becomes upset, saying he knows nothing, and decides to fight seriously, killing him in an instant. After that, Schnee approaches the king, telling him a demon was behind the incident. He becomes worried, but she explains that Ryon and Shin are safe. Geralt apologizes for what happened, so the king forgives him. Knowing he was being controlled, the king decides to keep it a secret, and Schnee heads off, telling Tira it's time to meet Shin. We return to Shin as Ryon explains that Holy Lands are cities that fell during the dusk of prosperity, and she thinks they're filled with powerful monsters. She reveals that she brought the skullface sword with her, asking Shin about his weapon. He tells her not to worry, as he thinks about hiding his full strength. She reveals that her people once inspected the city, and they entered through the south gate, where they found a small door which contains the device for opening the gate. Shin tries to jump over a wall, but realizes that he can't because he's being teleported back. He shows Ryon a ball of light, saying the entire city is a dungeon, so they can only reach the exit by following the spheres. They touch the ball of light, and it takes them to the next location as Shin realizes there's a monster nearby. They decide to fight it, and realize it's a ghost-type monster that uses wind magic. It summons a powerful whirlwind, but he slices it in half, creating an opening for Ryoni, who manages to slash the monster. It's still alive, so Shin follows up and delivers the finishing blow. Ryon asks him about his sword, realizing he was hiding it, so he explains that it's an extremely rare item. They make their way deeper into the dungeon and eventually run into a giant slime. Ryon thinks it's weak, so she charges in, but it suddenly restrains her. Shin attacks it with his skill and manages to save her. He tells her that the slime is immune to physical attacks, so he uses a fire spell which melts the slime, exposing its core, and Ryon manages to destroy it. But she wonders why Shin is looking away and realizes her clothes were torn. He gives her his outfit. He asks her if she can use magic, and she reveals that she isn't good with spells, so he teaches her a new trick which surrounds her sword with flames. She explains that she wants to repay him, but he tells her to protect the people in her kingdom. They reach the gate, but Shin suddenly feels strange as he mentions that he feels like he's getting sucked in. They see an enormous egg blocking the path, and Ryon reveals the monsters don't usually spawn from eggs. A griffin emerges from the egg, and he notes that it's made of ice, realizing it's about to attack them. He jumps away with Ryoni, realizing it can freeze anything with its breath. She wonders how they can defeat it, so he tells her he's going to distract it so that she can strike from behind. He throws his knives at the griffin, causing it to scream in pain. She sees her opening, so she attacks it with everything she has, and Shin uses his flames to finish it off, burning off its head. They think the fight is over, but the griffin suddenly regenerates, and they can't believe this is happening, so they decide to run away. Shin mentions that he has a plan. He tells her to find the device to open the gate, thinking the griffin was made using magic, so the only way to defeat it is by disabling the spell regenerating it. He tells her he'll deal with the griffin. She starts looking for the device as he prepares for battle, removing his restrictions because he thinks they can't survive unless he goes all out. He slices off the griffin's head, but it immediately regenerates. Ryon eventually finds the device she's looking for. Shin notes that the griffin won't die no matter how many times he defeats it, so he thinks about sealing it. But he suddenly sees a white sphere and gets this strange feeling again. He tries to destroy it, but it doesn't work, realizing it absorbs his attacks. His body suddenly starts glowing as the strange feeling disappears, and he charges in, attacking the griffin as he realizes that it has stopped regenerating. It tries to freeze him, but he leaps forward and activates his fire spell as he delivers the finishing blow, causing it to explode. They're able to escape the dungeon, and Shin tells her they're going to Valmer, where they will meet his companions. That evening, Ryon and Shin set up camp, He tells her to rest while he keeps watch. She asks him why he has everything they need, so he tells her he's used to traveling. She tries to seduce him, but he tells her he isn't interested. She asks him if he finds her attractive, and he realizes she's serious, but she explains that she likes talking to him because everyone's used to treating her as a princess. He tells her she can talk to him whenever she feels lonely. She tells him she's enjoying the moment, and he decides to keep her company. But the next day, Shin wakes up realizing something's wrong and sees an army of monsters, realizing that they're headed towards Valmer. Rion mentions that it's called the Flood and reveals that Valmer is used to dealing with them, but the city always suffers casualties. Shin doesn't want people to die, so he decides to protect the city. They reach Valmer, where Rion tells Shin to report to the Adventurers Guild, saying she will talk to the local lord because they need to gather the city's warriors. Shin meets the guild master, Lack, and he tells him about the flood. Lack remains skeptical, so Shin shows him his recommendation letter, and he explains that Rion is talking to the local lord. Lack realizes he isn't lying and decides to declare a state of emergency. Shin mentions that he will also do his part. After that, Shin sees a store called Meowland, thinking it looks familiar. He meets an elf who he recognizes as Barrett, and we learn that he served as a support character for one of Shin's friends. They decide to hang out, and Shin tells Barrett about the flood, but he wonders why Shin didn't deal with it, knowing he could have just wiped it out. He explains that it was because of Rion. He asks Barrett about Meowland, so he explains that it belongs to Shin's old friend Hibineko, saying there are other players in the city. Shin can't believe this because he thought Hibineko died during the death game. Barrett shows him a list of players in the world, and he realizes that he knows all of them, but Barrett gives him another list which contains the names of player killers, and we learn that Shin hates all of them because they killed his friends. Barrett reveals that Schnee gave the order to hunt player killers, and he wonders why she didn't tell Shin about this, thinking she's hiding something from him. The next day, we see Shin with Schnee and Tira, and they decide to meet the Chosen Ones at the Lord's castle. He wonders why Schnee didn't tell him about the player killers, and she realizes something's bothering him. They reach the castle where they meet the Lord Toro, who tells them about the battle plan, saying the Chosen Ones will serve as the vanguard. Shin realizes there are no monsters outside the castle and reports this to Toro, thinking it's because of the flood. Schnee explains that she has experienced it, saying the monsters have joined the flood, and she thinks there's a boss leading them. Toro believes her. That evening, everyone prepares for battle, and they see the flood approaching. Schnee uses a powerful spell, destroying countless monsters in an instant, but they press on, as Shin realizes this is no ordinary flood. He decides to fight the monsters, burning them with his flames, but he decides to hold back. Rioni orders everyone to attack, but there's suddenly a massive explosion as Tira uses her new skill. Rion slices through the monsters, but a large creature suddenly appears, and she struggles against it. But Avis joins the fight, and they gang up on the monster, allowing them to defeat it. She asks him what he's doing in Valmer, so he explains that the guild asked for help. Shin wears his disguise and saves a group of soldiers, telling them his name is Red. He advises them to leave because he might end up killing them with his new cursed weapon. Avis recognizes it, knowing that it instantly consumes everything it touches. Shin sees a demon, realizing it's the monster leading the flood. It uses a mind control spell, and Shin realizes the knights are struggling, but he's completely immune to its attack. He removes his restrictions and lands a powerful attack, slicing the demon in half. Schnee helps the knights recover, and they're able to win the battle without casualties. Shin's party is asked to stay in the city because the people want to reward them for dealing with the flood. They enter a banquet together, and they see Rion as Schnee asks Shin if he got lucky with her. He denies this, but Rion realizes he's acting strange, so she starts teasing him. Schnee decides to give them space, but Tira realizes something's wrong, so she entertains Rion, telling Shin to get drinks for them. But he joins Schnee instead, asking her if she got jealous, so she confirms this. She knows that he learned about the player killers, so she apologizes for not telling him about them. She explains that she decided to hide this from him because she didn't want him to return to his old self, thinking he's going to avoid her as he hunts them down. She thinks she isn't good enough for him because she could never replace his girlfriend Marino, but he hugs her, telling her not to blame herself. He's glad that he was able to find her. He forgives her for not telling him about the player killers, telling her she doesn't need to hide secrets from him. She asks him if he still loves Marino, and he confirms this, but she suddenly kisses him, saying she knows he will return to his world in the future, but she refuses to give up on him because she loves him. They return to the banquet and enjoy the night together. Shin notes that the world is still full of mysteries, and he's worried about the player killers, thinking he could be their next target. But now that he knows there are other players that are still in the game, he decides to look for them, and he continues his journey with his friends, thinking he might find the answers he's looking for. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.